call Mrs. Brooke Thompson. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, have a seat. Okay, Ms. Thompson, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good evening. My name is Mrs. Brooke L. Thompson.
And Brooke, just to get a little bit of background information about you, are you married?
I'm actually widowed. My late husband, Judge Henry J. Thompson, he died on October 1st, 1990.
Do you have any children?
Well, biological children, no, but I raised my stepdaughter Leslie as my own.
And where do you live, Ms. Thompson?
I live at 1751 Madison Street, right here in Nita City.
How long have you lived there?
I lived there since I married my late husband in 1982.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, and other than your late husband that you just told us about, has anyone else ever lived in the house with you?
Just my daughter Leslie.
Let's talk about your relationship with Leslie. How old was she when you married her father?
She was 6 years old.
And what did Leslie call you, Ms. Thompson?
She called me mother.
Did you have a good relationship with her ever since you married her father?
We were like mother and daughter. I always wanted the best for her. I sent her to private schools, and she was like my daughter.
How did you support yourself and Leslie financially after your husband died and you sent her to school?
Well, I received about $25,000 a year from my late husband's estate.
And did you have a life insurance policy or anything like that on Leslie?
Yes, I did.
How much was that policy worth, Ms. Thompson?
Well, it was worth $300,000, but it had a double indemnity clause, which means that if Leslie died from a homicide, I would get double that. So, because Leslie did die from a homicide, I got $600,000.
Okay, but when you took the policy out, what was your purpose in doing so?
Well, Leslie was my daughter. I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay.
Okay. And going back to the estate that your husband left you and the amount of money that supported you, was that enough for you and Leslie to live on comfortably?
No, it wasn't.
How did you supplement your income then, Mrs. Thompson?
Well, I owned two apartment buildings, and I rented them out for additional income.
And how involved were you in that process?
Well, I collected all of the rent.
Did you have any negative experiences as a result of you collecting your own rent?
Yes, unfortunately I did. Those apartment buildings weren't really in a great part of town, and one time a tenant rushed me with a knife, so I had to shoot him in self-defense.
Did the police warn you at that time that this was dangerous for you to do?
Yes, they did, but it was very important for me to get that money so I could support me and my daughter.
Okay. With the income from your late husband's estate and rent that you collected, what was your lifestyle like with Leslie at that point?
Well, Leslie and I had a comfortable lifestyle. Nothing lavish, but I wanted to make sure she got the best education, so I sent her to the private schools.
Okay. So you said earlier that you sent Leslie off to school, you paid for her to be there, and at any point did she move back in with you?
Yes, she did. After she had gone to business school, she came back and lived with me when she took a job at the bank.
And did you support her yourself with the money from the life estate?
Oh, well, I supported her at that time, yes, but she was also making her own money, too.
When did Leslie move out of your home, Miss Thompson?
She moved out in November of 2001 when she married Joe Mitchell.
And at that point, did you stop supporting her?
Yes, I did.
So even though you stopped supporting her then, were you happy about her marriage to Joe?
No, I was not.
Can you tell me why you weren't happy about that?
Well, Joe was lazy. When they started dating, she always paid for their gas and dinners and the shows they went to because Joe didn't have the money. I just was so worried that he would break Leslie's heart.
So let's go back to when they first started dating and you had first met Joe then, what did Joe do for a living exactly?
Well, he had a part-time job as a gas station attendant, but he always kept on talking about how his real career was his writing, but he wasn't making any money from it.
Were you supportive of his career choice?
No, he wasn't making any money, and I just thought my daughter deserved better.
Did you ever try to discourage Joe and Leslie from dating at any point, Miss Thompson?
Yes, I did. I didn't think he would make Leslie happy.
So when they were dating, how much time did you spend around Joe Mitchell?
Quite a bit. He came over to the house about 3 or 4 times a week to pick Leslie up to go on dates.
Okay. And after Joe proposed and they were married, did things improve?
No, not at all. Joe actually quit his job as a gas station attendant, and he wanted to be a writer, but he still wasn't making any money.
So even after they were married, did you still get to see Leslie frequently? Did they visit your house often?
Yes, they came to the house a couple times a month.
What did Joe Mitchell drive when he came to your house, Miss Thompson?
He drove an old beat-up white Pontiac.
When he came to visit, where would he park that car?
He would park right at the curb in the front of my house.
Did you ever hear Joe say anything specific that stuck with you for any reason?
Yes, there was this one time he came over to the house and he brought his gun, and he was just bragging about what an expert shot he was.
Okay, let's move on to another point. You said earlier that Leslie was living with you again before she was murdered. And how did that end up happening?
Well, Leslie came back to live with me when she and Joe separated. They had an argument because Leslie wanted him to get a job at the bank, but he refused to because he just wanted to keep on pursuing a writing career.
And what was your response to that? How did you feel?
I was glad to have her back home. I said she could live with me as long as she wanted to.
Did Joe ever come to visit you while they were separated?
Yes, he did. He came over about twice a week.
And when Joe came to visit your house, did you ever hear them argue?
Oh, yes.
Can you describe for us the way these arguments normally progressed?
Sure. Joe would come over talking about how he wanted Leslie back, and Leslie always said she would refuse to go back to him unless he gave up his career in writing and got a real job. But Joe wouldn't do that, so he'd just get angry, and they never got back together.
Were you afraid of Joe Mitchell, Miss Thompson?
Yes, I was. He threatened to hurt me or Leslie for ruining their marriage.
When was the last time that you saw Joe Mitchell before the day of Leslie's murder?
I saw him the night before. He came over and he told Leslie that this was the last time, this was the last chance, just one last time he wanted her to come back. And again, she refused because Joe just would not give up his career as a writer. Joe said he wasn't going to bother her again, but he'd make her regret it.
Okay, so you said that was the night before Leslie was killed.
Yes.
Let's move to the next day, which was Leslie's birthday. Can you tell us what you did that night?
Sure. It was Leslie's birthday, so I had dinner with her, and I gave her a present. I gave her a ring.
And did Leslie stay home with you that night, or did she leave?
No, she left for the movies. Yeah, she went to see a movie.
What was the weather like that night, Miss Thompson?
I mean, it was drizzling. I guess it was raining outside.
Did you see Joe that day?
Yes, I did. He came over while Leslie was out at the movies.
What did he tell you then?
He wanted to know when Leslie was going to be home.
Did he have anything with him when he came?
Yeah, he had something under his arm. It was wrapped up in newspaper.
Okay. And what was Mr. Mitchell wearing that night?
He was wearing a dark jacket. I think it was either black or blue.
How did he make you feel when he was at your house?
Well, I was afraid for Leslie.
Okay, Miss Thompson. Now, as difficult as it may be, let's talk about what happened when your daughter Leslie arrived home that night. What time would you estimate her arriving?
She got home at around 10 p.m.
Was it still raining when she got home?
Yeah.
Did she come right into the house?
No, she couldn't. She had forgotten her keys, so she rang the doorbell.
And did you go to let her in the door?
Yes.
Were there any lights on at that time, Miss Thompson?
Yeah, I had both the lights on at the bracket lights up beside the door, and there was a street light on across the street.
So you said that Leslie rang the doorbell. You went to let her in. How was she standing when that happened?
She was facing the door to come inside. Her back was to the street.
Could you see clearly past Leslie at that point?
Yes, I could.
And what happened then, Miss Thompson?
Well, I saw a car. It was Mr. Joe Mitchell's car, and it was coming really fast down the road. The brakes screeched and the car stopped right at the curb, and then I saw a man lean out of the car. There was some dark object in his hand, and I heard a shot, one shot, and Leslie fell over backwards.
Did Leslie say anything at that moment, Miss Thompson?
Leslie cried out, "Oh no! Oh no, Joe!"
Miss Thompson, how sure are you that the car you saw that night was Joe Mitchell's?
I'm positive.
Miss Thompson, how sure are you that the person in that car was Joe Mitchell?
I'm so positive. I'd seen his face over and over again.
One last question for you, Miss Thompson. How sure are you that Joe Mitchell is the man that murdered your daughter, Leslie?
Joe did it. I knew him. I knew his car. I saw him that night. I saw his car. Joe Mitchell shot and killed my daughter.
No further questions, Your Honor.